Welcome to the Edgevana Podcast, where we illuminate subjects in the IT infrastructure space. Get ready to hear some amazing insights from outstanding individuals that will change the way you think about IT. And now, here's your host, Mark Teely.
Nabeel, welcome to another episode of the Edgevana Podcast. I can't believe we've taken this long to have you on, but I'm proud to have you on the show. How you doing?
I'm doing well, Mark. Thank you very much for having me.
Awesome. And background notwithstanding, that could be an actual video, right?
Indeed. Yeah, it's basically home in the background.
That's awesome. Well, take care of the place for me.
Absolutely. I can't wait for you to get out here one of these days.
Well, I'm still fingers still crossed for August. So I'm hoping. We've all got our shots. So we'll see how things go. Yeah.
Outstanding. Right. Yeah. Well, we'll get some golf in, some beach time, and catch up.
Sounds good. So, Nabeel, before we get into some questions, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing recently. What's your background and what you've been doing recently?
Yeah, quite a bit. I'll give you a quick, to the listeners, a brief background. So, been in the data center industry for about 20 years, purely on an accident. Was an athlete growing up, and here we are, 20 plus years later. Initially started in, biometric retina scanning, programming, and whatnot, and later on in life, just the draw of the luck, ended up designing, building data centers around the world. And then most recently, I was a CIO at a company in California. And then thereafter, due to some life-changing events and a little bit of a health scare, decided to, throw in the towel and do something on my own. And that was really trying to find the purpose. I mean, what am I supposed to be doing out here? And what's my purpose as an individual? And it came about is to embrace my voice and embrace what I want to do and contribute and be a change agent. On a global basis, right? So I kind of feel like my turn is over. I mean, I've played my innings and it's time to actually go back and watch and maybe help the next generation. So last year, turns out that we started this initiative called the Nomad Futurist, whereby the idea of the whole initiative is to educate the younger generation, bridge the gap that we have actually started to create in technology, not just in data center, but in technology, and try to serve underserved communities. I mean, you and I are fortunate, right? We grew up where education was something that was provided to us, but there's a lot of people around the world that don't have that opportunity. So we want to give those people or those kids just one chance so they can potentially seek and be good citizens and contribute to the change.
Makes sense. And that's great. And I for the audience sake, I have a little bit of a personal insight into your health scare and can deeply appreciate your effort at changing your lifestyle and changing your focus on life and all that stuff. And so at risk of sounding like your dad, I'm proud of what you've done with your second opportunity, as it were, right? So Absolutely. That's outstanding. And I'm apparently too stupid. I'm almost at retirement age. And what did I decide to do? Go out and start a new company. So, but hopefully I'll manage to get through it without anything bad happening to me.
Oh, you will have a blast. I think you and I had this conversation 2 years ago in San Jose that, if you're gonna do it for yourself, do it with a passion, and things gonna come through. You gotta, at the end of the day, what I've learned, Mark, I mean, and you've been my mentor, is to figure out what is our purpose. Why are we doing what we're doing? And if you're passionate about it, things do happen. I mean, you do good things are gonna happen for you. So I'm with your skills, I'm confident that you're going to make this happen.
Hey, we didn't do this podcast so you could sell me, dude. All right. This is about you, man. But I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So, Nabeel, we talked about a couple of different areas of opportunity for discussion, and truthfully, either one of them could take potentially the whole next 25 minutes of the podcast. But let's start a little bit with trends. Is there a particular trend that you'd like to talk about? I mean, I can certainly name a bunch, anything from low code, no code to SASE to edge computing to how SASE is more important now than ever because of work from anywhere, and edge computing can leverage that to digital transformation. I mean, pick your poison. What would you like to talk about?
Well, I mean, I think the core is really the digital transformation, right? And what does that mean to the business and technology platforms that are actually supporting that whole initiative? Now, we've been at this for the last decade. We've been talking about digital transformation, but nobody really listened to anything that we had to say for the last, 8-9 years till COVID hit. And all of a sudden, wow, yeah, you mean we can actually work from home? You mean we can stay in business as organizations? So I think that's probably something to talk about. And I think we had this conversation roughly about in 2019 at a conference in San Jose, where I emphasized on the fact that foundationally we are weak.
Yeah.
We keep putting band-aids, and fortunately we've touched and tested the infrastructure the last year, and it's sustained in some way, form, or shape. The concern is what's next.
Right.
If we continue to do what we're doing right now, we're going to come to potentially a screeching halt. So the networks need to be redefined, security needs to be addressed. There's so much happening in the industry, so many connected devices. The fact that we have accepted this to be a digital world, everything around us with IoT, with SaaS, with UCaaS, all of that needs to be revisited.
Yeah, and so I agree with all that. And and I've used the term for IT a few times, and I don't know whether you and I have used it directly with each other, but I've used it a couple times where it's we tend to solve for symptoms all too often in IT instead of truly breaking and creating new opportunity. And to me, it seems like digital or business transformation, call it whatever we decide makes sense. I happen to like business transformation better because technically I believe we've been doing digital transformation since we connected the first network printer. But that being said, people are more used to digital transformation. Maybe I'll just use it. Do you see digital transformation as an opportunity to really not just polish what we do and make it a little more efficient, a little faster, a little bit more automated or whatever, but to rethink who we are as a company, how we address customers, how we absorb and change, and how we use technology to help us with all that?
Absolutely. I mean, history is proven, right? I mean, you look at Sears Holding Company, the largest catalog business in the world. What happened to them? Amazon, right?
Yeah.
Bezos leveraged platform and technology and took it to the next step. I mean, to where Sears could have been. So it's that mindset, the generational gap that we've got. I mean, same thing with the EV, right? I mean, Tesla. It was a company that was pretty much on the verge of being bankrupt to now being the brand. I mean, everybody knows what Tesla is. You had the opportunity for Honda, Ford, GM, and those were, the biggest companies back then, and they were the biggest roadblock, right? They paid lobbyists not to actually deploy EV vehicles. So there's so many different examples. I mean, when you turn around and look at it, that I think it's important that as the generation, the time and day that we live in, that business owners and executives and companies need to acknowledge that digital is the next big rush. I mean, data rush is the next big thing. And without this, without data, without technology, there's no business.
Yeah. And
or longevity thereof.
Right. And so, you talk to a lot of people on your show and outside of your show. What are some of the kind of successes beyond being good at adapting to work from anywhere or things like that, or having less visibility to processes that are normally human supported? What have you heard as great examples of companies that have overcome, for lack of a better description?
So companies basically in the tech sector, they've realized that they can work from home, they can work from anywhere. They do not need the bums in the seat, or seats in the bums rather, and the cars in the parking lot to prove how successful they are or how good the business is. Companies that have the old mindset, for instance, the guy that's the chairman of Chase, he wants everybody in the office. He wants everybody in the office. Whereas companies like REI, they're like, well, we'll walk out of leases. People can work remotely. So conceptually speaking, what I've learned from people that we have talked to or engaged in the Nomad Futurist podcast is the idea as ownership or leadership that we've got to transform with time. And working remote is okay. I think it's an opportunity in a lot of cases when we need to redefine the workforce. We need to redefine how we actually manage human capital. We need to redefine what the KPIs of a company are. And as a matter of fact, one cool thing that really came out and about through all these interactions was the fact that we potentially need to go and look at other countries, how do their things, right? For instance, Europe is a great example. I mean, they get 4 months of vacation. In America, we get 4 days of vacation. It's like, wow, yeah, you've got a big milestone. So creating that life and work balance, I think, has come through the last year plus. I've kind of talked about the life and work balance versus the work and life balance that we teach in America.
Yep.
And I think COVID has kind of, helped make that transition whereby the workforce, like, what? I don't need to commute in San Francisco 4 hours a day.
Right.
To go work for 9 or 10 hours. I mean, I've lost half the day in commuting. I can move from San Francisco and move to Little Rock, Arkansas, get relatively about the same amount of money, maybe a little less, but at least I've got a quality of life. Right. So I've started to see a lot of people doing that. And I mean, living in Hawaii, for instance, it's amazing. You'll probably, have a laugh at this, that, typically Hawaii real estate is very stable. Like, you don't really see extensive moves. But in the last year, you see a property today on Zillow or Realtor.com or whatever the case might be. People are buying them sight unseen. The real estate prices over here skyrocketed at least 35 to 40%.
Wow.
So, people are moving. And I think, technology is actually the backbone of it all, to give them the ability to live anywhere, work from anywhere.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, it makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, and I agree on the life work balance thing. It's I used to really feel bad, I guess is the best word I can come up with, for people like when I was working in Santa Clara and living in Fremont, California, just 20 minutes away without traffic. I would work with people that would live way out in places like Lodi or Oakdale and get up at 4 o'clock in the morning so they could get on the road by 5 and be in the office by 6:30 so that they could leave by 3:30 or 3 so they could beat traffic in both directions. And even with beating traffic, they were still on the road for 90 plus minutes in each direction so they could afford a home. And so I think however companies re-envision themselves in a future of working from anywhere, or greater automation, or better use of data, I'm a huge believer, as I know you are, in the idea that the employee is customer one. And whatever arrangement you can make to make the employee customer happy is always going to end up being the right thing for the company, is my perspective. And so I hope more companies, I just saw Facebook, I think, announce that they've decided not to make people come back to the office anymore either. And they had originally had a plan for opening up the office, I think in Q4 or something like that. I don't remember. So this is gonna stick for some percentage of the workforce. And I think the beauty of it is that just because you were living and working in San Francisco doesn't mean you have to leave San Francisco. But if you moved to San Francisco to work in San Francisco, but you always really wanted to live outside of the entrance to Yosemite National Park because you're a rock climber, then that's the beauty of both worlds, right? So
absolutely, yeah. I mean, and just one of the things that also I've learned throughout the last year plus is the fact that you give that quality of life to people, or an opportunity so they can actually live and spend time with family or do things that they have always wanted to do, and not wait till retirement. You've seen significant increase in efficiencies and productivity. I mean, the stuff that we have produced in the last year is actually much better than what we produced in the last 5 years. I mean, the last year has been phenomenal from that perspective, right? Mm-hmm. And we've developed more tools. We have still been able to connect to everybody around the world. We've actually leveraged tools like what we're using right now to stay connected and be productive. Yep. So I think it's going to stick. there's going again. The problem with us as human beings is that we take these massive strides. I mean, we're like this grandfather clock pendulum, like, the extreme to one side or another. We've got to find that perfect medium, and that balance. And, there are companies that probably will ask you to come back maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week, whatever that case might be. But the sense of balance is more important than anything.
Yeah, no, I agree. So we're already more than halfway through the podcast, and I want to make sure we have a chance to talk a little bit about the topic that's in the title of your podcast, right?
The Nomad Futurist.
That's right. So tell us a little bit about what you or what some of your guests are seeing that you believe will have, from a future standpoint, will have a significant impact on what people do and how people live or how people work with technology or both.
So Nomad Futurist came about, kind of on a personal note, like, okay, I was sick and tired of living in California, and it was time to get out and live my life and not wait till retirement. I mean, I don't even know if I'm actually ever going to have an opportunity to see that. But on a positive note, I'm living tomorrow today. I don't need to wait till tomorrow. The idea behind Nomad really is to be able to work and live anywhere that you choose to. And the futurist part of it is, okay, well, we've got to establish a foundation that enables us to get to tomorrow, give us an opportunity for tomorrow. And in doing so, there's multiple elements to that. One is that we need to actually work on the foundation for tomorrow, so that we don't end up building a house of cards. And the second thing is to create the level of education and simplify technology. A part of the challenge that there is in technology is the generational gaps. The fact that, Papa, Grandma, and Granddad, they don't want to log onto a computer because they're afraid it's going to blow up. I don't know what to do with it. So it's creating that general awareness, simplifying technology so they can potentially connect to it or relate to it in some way, form, or shape. And these tools like Teams or Zooms or whatever else. I mean, the interfaces have become very, very simple. Like if you look at WebEx 10 years ago, it was complicated. You need to be a rocket scientist to operate WebEx or Meet Me Room. Now you can just point, click, drop, and there you go. You've got a session initiated.
Right.
So as a futurist, one of the things that there's multiple things that we're looking at. It's like, okay, how do we improve on those experiences, the user experiences? And I think you made a great point earlier. It's, helping and improving that experience internally within the employees. So it's the employee experience, the customer experience, and it's bridging the generational gap. So, we don't want to typically like to get into nitty-gritty stuff with, the technical elements of it. We try to keep it simple, a high level, so that there is that interest level, there's that comfort, like, hey, come and use the technology. Now, where it's headed, I'll tell you this, everything is going to be connected. I mean, maybe you and I might have a chip. I don't know, maybe. I don't know if it's good, bad, or ugly, but the idea is to develop a case. Do you want it? You don't want it? Whatever the case might be, right? So it's having those open conversations, trying to figure out what the future might hold. Like, I mean, we certainly don't want to be like the Minority Report, but is there a good reason for that? Now, New York Jets, for instance, is doing that. I mean, they've got chips installed on all their jackets as they're playing the game or as they're practicing. Dallas Cowboys, another great example. I mean, they're using these platforms to understand the players' behaviors and improve the game and, potentially eliminate the number of injuries that they go through. So could that be mass marketed and mass used? We don't know that yet, but, that's the future. Things are going to happen. One thing that I reckon all the time is the fact that I'm never going to go back and handwrite a letter. Now, granted, it's actually really cool to do so, and I tell everybody it's like the best thing ever. If and when I get a letter, it's like the best feeling ever. But the world that we live in today, so much is happening so quickly that it's difficult to take the time to handwrite something. So we're not going to go back in time. We're going to continue to move forward, and for that, technology is the next big thing. Data rush is the next big thing, and data is everywhere. We've been collecting that information for the last couple of decades, and there's going to be more and more of it.
Right. So when you think, when I think about the future, and obviously, I'm in the data center and edge space. And when you think about the potential future impact, what do you envision from a kind of a scale standpoint? When you think about what might happen in a city or in a region, and two, do you think whatever that scale is or whatever that kind of layer of opportunity is, do you think we'll be able to bring that to a wider audience outside of cities, get more rural deployments of capability and technology?
Absolutely. I mean, I think Biden recently announced a $2.3 trillion capital expense for developing the network. That's just the beginning. I believe eventually there will be this bubble around the world that everything and everybody's connected. When will that happen? I don't know. I think it's the 10G of computing or the network, but it will happen. Everything and everybody is going to be connected. And as more and more people move away from the metropolis or the major football cities, they're going to require, it's going to become a prerequisite in any site, every city, every county, every town, every village.
No, I think that makes sense, and I would agree with that. So, I noticed one of my own heroes was on your show a while back, Vince Cerf, and I got a chance to talk with him and work with him a little bit in the end of the first decade, the aughts, on a project called Infrastructure 2.0. It'd be interesting to get your perspective on some of the thoughts that he shared.
Well, I mean, Windsurf, I mean, he's a legend.
Yeah.
I mean, if it wasn't for him, I don't know if he would actually be doing this today. It probably might be a total insane world. So, I've got all the respect in the world for him. I mean, I think he's one of those thought leaders that actually gave us an opportunity to have some sort of a sanity in this, time that we are in today. From the conversation that we had with him, he is a big advocate of computing, and he's a big advocate of everybody connected. So I totally get it. He's also a big advocate of security and concerns thereof for privacy. So, I mean, everything that he's doing is absolutely phenomenal. His contribution and sharing his vision from when he started to where we are today is just remarkable.
Yeah.
Areas that he's got himself involved into. I mean, those 3 to 4 decades of experience that he's got in helping the lobbyists and the policymakers is just going to help and pay dividends in the long term.
Right. I think that totally makes sense. So, as we come towards the end of the podcast, Nabeel, how would you like to wrap up? Anything that you'd like to leave the audience with? Tell them about what you've been doing with the podcast, or just a particular message that's near and dear to your heart?
Well, I mean, there's so many different places we can take that conversation. But I think, one of the things that close and dear to my heart is like, live life like there's no tomorrow. And if tomorrow comes, live again, and give people and technology a chance. I mean, don't be a stickler. Don't say no to it. There are good things. There are good people. So appreciate that and acknowledge it, and maybe be a part of it. Maybe a part of the change. Don't be a stickler.
All right. And any final thoughts on how we might approach delivering education, maybe, because we talked about that at the beginning of the podcast, delivering education more effectively to a wider audience?
So I mean, our goal is to, my personal goal is that every kid has an opportunity and has at least some sort of a basic education. How are we going to get there? I mean, eventually when the bubble is there, I would love to have every kid have a connected device that's actually managed so that we don't, give them information that they don't need or they're not ready for. In the meantime, I think it's all of our responsibility to get to the kids early enough and give them exposure, give them experiences, or provide them experiences rather, that they're interested in seeking education of some sort. Whether it be a school in India or in Himalayas or in, Oakland, California, wherever it is, give them an education. I also believe, if we look at our education system, we have not had any major reforms or change since the Industrial Revolution. So I think it's time that we change what we teach the kids, what we teach the next generation. We are at the Industrial Revolution 4.0. And we have not really done anything. I mean, everybody is still taught the same thing that will start with them in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Right? Time has changed. I also believe it's imperative that we actually, have some sort of a vocational school or vocational learning system where kids are given an opportunity that they can at least identify what they're interested in and seek that career path. So education is going to change. Maybe we need NOS. No physical school, really. We have lived in this COVID world for the last year and a half, and we've actually been able to educate kids using platforms and technologies. Why can't we build on it?
Yep. I think that makes sense. And I look at the opportunity and the innovation that we've had to apply to keep kids being educated, to keep being able to work while working from remote or from home. And I think there's never been a better time to rethink not only the education that we deliver, but how we deliver it so that it's more fit for the individual, right? I mean, I think that those two things are crucial, is how we deliver it and for who do we deliver it to. I think is incredibly important for us to improve. And that, ideally we open up enough that we actually start teaching kids the whole truth and nothing but the truth, as opposed to varnishing much of our history. I think it'll just make us a stronger nation as a whole. So Fingers crossed. Well, Nabeel, it's been great to see you and have this chat. I really appreciate you being on the show. Folks, Nabeel, for anyone who's listening, how do they find you or your show?
Well, it's very simple. Nomad Futurist, and it's nomadfuturist.org. And I think if you Google Nabeel Mahmood, I'm fairly easy and simple to find. Not very many like me anymore.
Twitter?
Nabeel Mahmood.
There we go. Easy enough. Cool. All right. Well, thank you again for being on the show. And everyone, thank you for listening. And this has been the Edgevana Podcast. And if you think you know someone who might want to be on the show or would be a good candidate, feel free to shoot us an email. Thank you very much and enjoy the day.
Thank you for listening to the Edgevana Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast listening app or on YouTube. To learn more, visit www.edgevana.com. Thanks for listening, and be sure to join us on our next episode.